He wasn't supposed to be doing this. Not tonight. Not with that arm. Not after the announcement that had sent shockwaves through the baseball world just hours before the first pitch. Not after the Dodgers had quietly, carefully, deliberately told everyone who was listening that Shohei Ohtani would not be taking the mound tonight due to injury. He was supposed to be a designated hitter and nothing more. He was supposed to be protected. Managed. Kept within the boundaries of what a medical staff and a coaching staff and a front office had collectively decided was safe and responsible and necessary. He was supposed to be limited. And then he hit his 21st home run. And the legendary pitchers who had spent their careers understanding exactly what it takes to do what Ohtani does, who had spent decades mastering one side of the game that Ohtani plays on both sides simultaneously, lost their minds. Not with admiration. Not with polite applause. With fury. Because what Ohtani had just done didn't fit inside any framework they had built for understanding baseball. It didn't fit inside any conversation about injury management or workload or the physical limits of a human arm. It sat completely outside every boundary they had ever been taught to respect. And the crowd couldn't stop cheering. And the legendary pitchers couldn't stop being furious. And Shohei Ohtani couldn't stop being Shohei Ohtani. The announcement had come in the way these things always come. Clinical. Precise. Stripped of emotion by design. A brief statement from the Dodgers organization confirming that Ohtani would not pitch in tonight's game due to an injury that needed to be managed carefully. No specific timeline. No dramatic details. Just the quiet, controlled language of a team protecting its most valuable asset. The reaction was immediate. Fans processed it with the particular anxiety that comes from watching someone irreplaceable become suddenly vulnerable. Analysts dissected the language of the announcement looking for clues about severity. Beat reporters fired off questions to anyone in the organization who would answer them. And across the baseball world, a collective conversation started about what this meant for Ohtani, for the Dodgers, for the season. But then the game started. And Ohtani stepped into the batter's box. And everyone remembered that even without the mound, even limited to one half of his impossible combination, Shohei Ohtani was still the most dangerous offensive player in baseball. The pitcher who faced him that night knew it. You could see it in the way he approached the at-bat. Careful. Methodical. Trying to find angles and sequences that would neutralize the one thing that couldn't really be neutralized. It didn't work. The ball left Ohtani's bat with that sound. The one that's become instantly recognizable to anyone who has watched him play. The sound that's slightly different from every other home run you've ever heard, as if the ball itself is cooperating with something larger than a baseball game. 21st home run of the season. Into the seats. And the stadium, which had been holding something back since the injury announcement, released everything at once. The cheering didn't stop. That's the detail that matters most. Because stadiums cheer home runs and then move on. The crowd erupts, acknowledges, settles. That's the rhythm. That's how it works. But this crowd wouldn't settle. Because this wasn't just a home run. This was a statement from a man who had been told to step back, to be careful, to protect himself, and had responded by hitting a ball into the upper deck. This was the universe's way of refusing to cooperate with injury reports and medical bulletins and organizational caution. The cheering continued through his home run trot. Continued as he crossed home plate. Continued as he disappeared into the dugout and his teammates surrounded him. Continued until the stadium itself seemed to understand that something had just happened that didn't have a clean category. That lived in the space between sports and myth. And in living rooms and sports bars and broadcast studios across the country, legendary pitchers were watching. And they were not calm. The reaction from the pitching community came in waves. First on social media, where former aces and Hall of Fame candidates and Cy Young winners posted with the barely contained frustration of people who have devoted their lives to one craft watching someone treat that craft as a casual side project. One former legendary pitcher, a man who had won multiple Cy Young awards and spent 18 years mastering the art of retiring hitters, posted a single sentence. He's hurt and he just did that? No context. No elaboration. Just those 7 words and the particular fury of someone who understood exactly what it took to generate that kind of power, that kind of timing, that kind of precision at the plate, and was watching it happen from someone who also throws 97 miles per hour on the mound. Another former pitcher, one of the most decorated in the last 2 decades, went further in a broadcast segment that aired within an hour of the home run. He sat across from his co-host and shook his head with the slow deliberateness of a man trying to maintain composure. I need everyone to understand something, he said, leaning forward. I need people who don't pitch for a living to understand what it actually means to do what Ohtani does. His co-host nodded, sensing something genuine was coming. When you're a pitcher, your entire existence revolves around one thing. Your arm. Everything you eat, everything you do in the gym, every decision about rest and recovery and workload, it all serves the arm. The arm is everything. And you protect it like it's the most fragile thing in the world. Because it is. He paused, his jaw tightening. So when I see a man who has just been announced as too injured to pitch step up to the plate and hit a baseball 430 feet with a swing that requires every muscle in his upper body working in perfect coordination, including the muscles that connect directly to that injured arm. He stopped. Looked at his co-host. Then back at the camera. I don't have a word for it. I genuinely don't have a word for what that is. A third voice emerged from one of the most respected pitching analysts in the game. A former closer who had saved over 400 games and was now one of the most thoughtful voices in baseball media. His reaction was less furious and more unsettled. As if Ohtani's home run had disturbed something fundamental in the way he understood the sport. He was speaking on a podcast that was being recorded live when the home run happened. His co-host alerted him mid-conversation. He went silent for almost 10 full seconds. Play it again, he said finally. They pulled up the video. He watched it without speaking. See his hip rotation there, he said quietly, almost to himself. See how his front side clears. See the extension through the zone. Another pause. There is nothing injured about that swing. Nothing. And I'm not saying the Dodgers are lying. I'm saying that what his body just did is not compatible with my understanding of human physiology. His co-host laughed nervously. The former closer didn't laugh. I mean that literally, he said. I mean that as a pitcher who has spent 20 years understanding what the arm and shoulder and core can and cannot do, I am telling you that what Shohei Ohtani just did does not fit inside the rules I know. He leaned back. And that terrifies me. Not as a competitor. As someone who thought he understood this game. Inside the stadium, none of that external conversation reached the field. The crowd was still processing what it had witnessed, still carrying the emotional residue of a moment that felt too large for a regular season game in the middle of the week. Ohtani returned to the dugout and found his seat with the quiet economy of someone who was not interested in making the moment bigger than it already was. He accepted the congratulations of his teammates with a nod and a brief smile. He picked up his water bottle. He watched the game continue. As if 21 home runs was simply the natural accumulation of doing his job correctly. As if hitting one in the middle of an injury announcement was nothing more than Tuesday. When a reporter managed to get a brief exchange with him between innings, the question was unavoidable. Shohei, you were announced as not pitching tonight due to injury. Does hitting a home run like that affect how you feel physically? Ohtani considered the question with the patience of someone who had heard 1,000 versions of it. Hitting and pitching use different things, he said simply. My arm needs rest. My swing is fine. The reporter followed up. Were you trying to send a message with that home run? To anyone who might be concerned about your condition? Ohtani was quiet for a moment. I was trying to hit the ball hard, he said. That's all I'm ever trying to do. Dave Roberts, in his post-game availability, was asked repeatedly about how Ohtani could hit a home run of that magnitude while managing an injury significant enough to keep him off the mound. Roberts handled the questions with the careful precision of a manager who understood that every word about Ohtani's health would be analyzed and reanalyzed by every medical expert and baseball mind in the country. Shohei understands his body better than anyone, Roberts said. He knows what he can do and what he needs to protect. We trust him completely. But the legendary pitchers reacting online seemed to think what he did physically wasn't possible for someone managing an injury, a reporter pushed. Roberts almost smiled. I'd invite them to come explain that to Shohei directly, he said. I'll set up the meeting. The cheering had finally stopped by the time the stadium emptied. The lights dimmed one section at a time. The grounds crew moved across the field in the particular silence that follows extraordinary events. But in broadcast studios and living rooms and sports bars, the legendary pitchers were still talking. Still trying to find the framework. Still trying to fit Shohei Ohtani into a definition of baseball player that made sense. They hadn't found one yet. They might never find one. Because Ohtani had been told tonight that he couldn't pitch. That his arm needed protection. That the mound was off limits. And he had responded by hitting his 21st home run. While the crowd cheered so loudly it couldn't be stopped. While the legendary pitchers burned with a fury born entirely from the terrifying recognition that the sport they had devoted their lives to mastering had just been made to look like something Shohei Ohtani does casually. On an off night. While injured. He wasn't supposed to be doing this. He did it anyway. He always does it anyway.